This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, compulsively punchable.
He's the kind of guy who you'd probably just punch on the arm really hard if you ever met him.
Worshipped by feminists.
He pokes fun at feminism and women, just joking around, his whole sandwich making thing.
Mildly inspiring.
Yes, I recommend the Ben Settle Show, and anybody who isn't on it, that's their own loss.
Somewhat authentic.
Ben is a very distinct personality. There's no fluff. I can't stand fluff.
Syrupy sweet.
Tells it like it is, and sometimes may not be the most polite manner, shall we say.
Kind of useful.
So I have spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaching and masterminds, and I've learned more from Ben Settle's podcast than from any of that.
Semi-intelligent.
Ben sounds like a crazy guy at times, but he's one of the smartest individuals in marketing I've ever met.
Mostly forgettable.
He's always in the forefront of my mind.
The BenSettle.com podcast begins now.
This is Ben Settle of the BenSettle.com podcast. So, Jonathan, I was telling you before we our behind the scenes chit chat, which sometimes lasts way longer than you want it to, because it's like I haven't talked to you in forever. I gotta talk to you, man. I gotta I go all extrovert on you. I was saying, well, you're it's like the opposite of what. I was telling, so you're like, what's good? What's going on? What's good? I said, well, there's something bad going on, and I'll be talking about it in this episode. Essentially pulling a Facebook on you, like with these idiots on Facebook who say something bad happened, but they won't say what happened. Oh, something. And, I always found that to be almost like cock blocking. If something happened, just say what it was, or don't just do it for sympathy and likes. Do it because you have a point. Nobody's going to listen to me on this, by the way, Jonathan. And why should they? I'm like the last person to listen to when it comes to anything social media. But so here's the update. Now, at the time of this recording, which is well before the time when people will actually be hearing this, just last week, in fact, it was Tuesday or Wednesday, it was almost a week ago, about a week ago, actually. It was like a week ago. I'm sleeping one night, sound asleep at Chateau Settle. Everything's fine. There's no thieves trying to break in. There's no meth heads. It's not the Burgle.
Oh, no.
I'm in a much better town than that. I did not have to, worry about that. But my dog, who sleeps on my bed, just cries out in excruciating pain, like squealing. And I'm like, what the hell? It's 2 a.m. And so, I was like, what the hell is going on? And then later that, I didn't know if maybe she just, stepped on something or whatever. I mean, something was going on with her front paws. And so I ended up taking her to the vet a couple days later because it really wasn't that bad. I mean, that happened. It was like a one-time thing. And then it happened again.
She'll be fine.
No, it wasn't that. I tried to make an appointment, but they were all booked up. I had to wait a couple days. So I go in there and they check her out. And it turns out my dog, my 13-year-old dog, has arthritis, which came out of nowhere. It was I've never seen anything like that happen before. One day they're fine, the next day, But this is what happens with dogs. It just happens. So right now I'm in the process of finding the right stuff for her. I'm trying all kinds of stuff on her. But it's going to be okay. She'll be okay. If anyone listening to this, anybody gives a crap, she'll be okay. Especially by the time this airs, we'll have had this under control. But one thing I've been doing this week, instead of walking her on the beach, because she can still walk and run. This is weird. She runs up and down stairs. She sprints with me outside. There's no problem. It's just something when she lays on her paws. Only when she's laying down is her problem. But just to be safe, I have not been taking her down the steep steps to the beach until we get this kind of under control. Because, who knows? So instead, I've been taking her to, right down the street from where I live, there's a church. And there's usually nobody there, on the weekdays especially. There's a big parking lot, lots of room. And, so I just took her for a walk down there. And I always take a do-bag with me. A do-bag, it's the bag you pick up dog poop with, for anyone who doesn't know what a do-bag is. And so I take her down there with the do-bag because I have to do this because, even though she had already gone twice that day and really probably didn't have to go a third time, just as I thought, right when we get to the church grounds, Zoe picks a nice piece of sacred ground to defile.
Nice.
She's pooping on sacred ground, basically. And of course, I had to pick that up because, respect. But it got me to thinking, now this isn't, I get these weird, this just happens whenever something like that happens. She's pooping on sacred ground. And as she's pooping on sacred ground, I had a marketing epiphany. Jonathan, I'll take my epiphanies where I can get them.
Yeah.
All right. And if that means, if that's one she's always pooping on sacred ground, then so be it. All right. And it made me realize, like, okay, so in my way of thinking, and we talked about this on the old Ben Settle show podcast, but we're going to talk about it again because it's very important. And because it goes with pooping on sacred ground. I just like saying pooping on sacred. I have no idea why. This is going to make a great title for this show, Pooping on Sacred Ground. In my way of thinking, which is the correct way of thinking, as everybody knows, in the kind of business we're all doing, okay, which is direct response marketing, right? I don't think anyone listening to this probably is not. If they're not doing direct response, they probably should be. I mean, I don't think the executives of Coca-Cola and Pepsi and, Office Depot, they're not listening to this show. Okay, we're talking to people who use direct response marketing. That is, in my way of thinking, sacred ground. Like, that's the sacred ground that we all walk on in this business. And when people veer away from when they veer away from doing direct response, and they think that, for example, if social media is different or that the internet makes it different when it doesn't at all. If anything, the internet means you can make less mistakes, in my humble but accurate opinion. By veering away from the hardcore sacred direct response marketing, it is just like when my dog Zoe poops on sacred ground. You, Jonathan, whenever you veer from direct response marketing, you might as well be taking a crap on sacred ground, in my way of thinking. So, that it is. And it happens sometimes. All right. It does happen. And that's why you want to bring the do bag and you want to clean up your mess and don't do it again. But I'll give you an example. So I have long contended, for years, I've contended this, and only one person has really argued with me about this, that the only purpose of a website, if you're doing direct response marketing, again, we're not talking to Coca-Cola here. I'm not talking to Pepsi with their idiotic Kendall Jenner commercial. Did you see that, Jonathan?
No, I heard about it, but I didn't see it.
Oh, it's so stupid. I'm telling you, this is what the millennials brought forth with their idiocy. I know there's millennials listening to this, and I don't mean you personally are an idiot, but your people. Your generation. Okay, this is the stupidity. This is who they're appealing to. And by the way, in a few weeks, we're going to be doing a show, Jonathan, on why Gen X make the best entrepreneurs, which ought to make everybody mad except Gen Xers. So hopefully we'll get some steamy to go on this theme of pooping on sacred ground, a steamy pile of argument. Anyway, back to the thing here. You're always letting me get off track here, Jonathan. You're always pulling me off track with your little side trips and everything. All right, I'm going to let you do that to me this time again. If you're doing direct response marketing, the only purpose, ultimately, of your website is to build a list. Now, I can already hear people rolling their eyes. Not my website. My website's to brand me. It's to build trust in my customers, right? It's to let me demonstrate my knowledge, Ben. You're wrong. It's not to build a list is important, Ben, but that's not the purpose of my website. Yes, it is. If you're doing direct response, you may not know it's the purpose of your website. You may be foolishly not realizing it's the purpose of your website. But at the end of the day, the only point of a website is to build a list. Now, you could say email list. You could say a list of client leads. You could do a list of, it could be a direct mail list. It doesn't really matter. It could be a phone number list. It depends how you collect information. But at the end of the day, the only purpose of a direct response marketing website is to build a list. Now, or you could say to make a sale. Obviously, some people can make sales right off the bat, but what is the purpose of that sale if not to build a customer list? Again, if you're doing direct response marketing, the money is all made in the back end. So it's all about building a list. This is sacred ground we're walking on here, okay? Branding yourself is great. I have no problem with that, but it serves to build a list. Demonstrating your knowledge to gain trust from your precious snowflake-like leads. It's, again, why are you building the trust? Jonathan, tell me any other reason why you'd want to build trust with a lead to a website other than to get them on a list or to buy something. Is there a reason? I mean, I don't know.
So they'll like me? Yeah, I want them to like me.
If you want them to like you, I suppose, but why do you want them to like you?
Because I want to be their friend and I'm insecure and I get all my validation from the social medias.
Exactly. So this is my whole point. The people who act, and there are people who think exactly what you're saying. I know who you're mocking here, Jonathan. You're mocking some of these woo-woo coaches especially. Oh my God. We're going to do a whole show in the future. I don't know when, probably next month or something, on just relentlessly and viciously mocking the woo-woo coaches out there. Jonathan, I have an inside mole. We'll call her a mole for now. She doesn't want to be called a mole, but she's going to be called a mole for the purpose of this. I have an inside mole in that industry who is forwarding me the retarded things these people say about like putting crystals in their bras.
Oh,
I swear to God, I'm not even joking here. This is like screenshotted stuff. It's not like even exaggerated. And we were going to have a great time with that one. And, you know, the coaches will hate me, but they already do anyway. Those people don't like me anyway, and nor do I want them to like me. I want them to despise and hate me, and I'm going to give them a solid reason to. I want them complaining about me on you know, Fruitcake Book and all that. I want that. And that's what that show is going to do. And that'll be fun. Anyway, back to the pooping on sacred ground. Direct response marketing is the sacred ground. When people sit there and they try to make their website about anything than building a list or making a sale/transaction of some kind, okay, or putting them on a list of some kind, they are pooping on sacred ground and they are angering the marketing gods, Jonathan. And, you know, unfortunately, they don't even realize it. They don't even realize it. And yet, take the opposite view and realize that everything is about building your list. You start doing things much differently. Suddenly, you don't have all these social media share buttons on your site. Well, I really don't understand the point of social media share buttons, Jonathan, unless you happen to have like thousands of followers and you're going to get thousands of likes on something. It's going to work against you. Oh, I have a social media share button, but 2 people liked it. That's not working for you. That's a reason not to join your list. And I don't want them clicking anything on my site unless it's going to lead to them either buying something from me or joining my list of some kind. So, for example, if you were to look at my site at bensettle.com, you will see that I have no outbound links to anything. I just don't. I don't link to anything outbound. I don't want them going to someone else's cash register. So I don't link to my Facebook profile or any of that, because I understand the direct response principle, Jonathan. The principle, not tactic. The principle of sell one thing at a time. But what do most sites do? They're trying to sell you on the opt-in. They're trying to sell you on joining their Facebook and going to their YouTube and looking at their Instagram and all this other stuff. And it's a complete, or checking out their other 10,000 websites they have. They have a page with all their websites. One thing at a time. That's the direct response marketing thing. Now, you can veer from this at times, and some people do. And in some ways, it's not as bad, and it's not like, you know, it's not necessarily pooping on sacred ground. But for the most part, you should be selling one thing. So the only thing you'll see on my blog, for the most part, now I poop a little bit on sacred ground on this, but is the only emails I put up are the ones that sell emailplayers.com. So you could say, Ben, you're sending them to another site. Not so fast, Charlie, because the brilliant and esteemed Jim Yagi, who you and I both know, helped me with this. I said, Jim, here's my problem. I don't want to put outbound links on my site. I just want people to join. I don't want them joining email players on my blog. I want them on my list first. And in his evil, in Jim's ultimate evil, he goes, bro, because, you know, he always calls me bro. Like that's his way of talking. He goes, bro, this is so easy. Don't even worry about this. I got this. And so what he does is he's rigged it so when you click emailplayers.com, and maybe any link, but I know for sure emailplayers.com, on my blog, it shunts you over to the opt-in page and says, you know, before you can subscribe, I want you to get your free issue by joining my email list. So that's my whole point. And I have other, you know, and then like I have a page that's just full of podcasts, episodes and all that, but all that stuff is now hosted on that blog. It's all there. I don't want them leaving the site until they've opted in. Once they've opted in, I don't care if they ever come back. So that's the difference between me and all the other baboons out there, Jonathan. I don't want them back. Yeah. Once they've opted in. I'll tell them where to go after that.
I bet you will.
So I really believe the only purpose of the website is a direct response. I gotta be very clear here, Jonathan, because somebody who doesn't understand context, and there are many of them out there. I see them all the time. They just don't get context. They don't. These are the people that in the 1980s, when deodorant commercials used to like show you that they're dry or whatever and they're not chalky, they would put it on their forearm. Do you remember that, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay, so they would put it on their forearm to show you that it. And these people who don't get context are the very people who used to probably put deodorant on their forearms instead of under their arms because they're so literal and they don't understand context. But so for people who don't understand context, I'm not talking about Coca-Cola. I'm not talking about Pepsi. I'm not talking about Office Depot or Costco or any big corporate site. I think they would all be better served doing something like that, but we're not talking to them. None of the people are listening to this show. The only people listening to the show are all you losers out there that are at my level, down in the dirt at my level. Okay, those are the only people. All you little fledglings down there, all of us, we're a very lower species people at the bensettle.com podcast. We're not up there with the big corporate people. We're down in the dirt, rooting around like pigs, snorting and honking and, getting dirty. That's who we're talking to. So for context, I'm not talking about big corporate sites. I am talking about people like us, kitchen table entrepreneurs, especially like myself. Like Jonathan, I'm a total kitchen table. I don't have a real business. I don't know about you. You actually have more of a real business. I don't have a real business because if something happens to me, it's done. It's all over.
Oh.
I don't have like systems in place or anything like that like you do. I'm working on that though. I'm working on building an actual email copywriting agency. You probably didn't know that.
What?
Yeah. This is very much in the discussion stage. By the time this episode airs, it may already be launched. I'm not sure. But I basically have been sitting on my brand, as we're talking about brand, that, I'm not doing anything with it. I just because I can't be bothered to do more work, but I've figured out a way where I can do very, very, very minimal work. In other words, I'm not working on any of the emails.
No, you're going to copy chief, right?
I'm not even going to do the copy chief. I got someone else to do. Misty will be doing the copy chiefing.
Nice.
She's my star student, and she loves doing stuff like that. So anyway, there'll be more about this later, but so that's more going in the right direction, of at least having something in place, that can carry on with or without my daily involvement. So anyway, so don't poop on sacred. That's the bottom line. If you're doing direct response marketing, stay within the principles of direct response marketing. Don't veer off from them. And if you do, clean that mess up, just like I had to clean up Zoe's poop when she pooped on sacred ground. I don't know how much I'm stretching with this analogy, Jonathan, but that's all I'm going to talk about today. Next week, we're going to talk about pubic hair on the bar of soap, which is
all right.
So that'll be an interesting one for people who, when you get that pit in your stomach, like you don't know if something's right or not, and your gut's telling you something, and how to deal with that. And a merry time will be had by all. And I will talk to you next week, Jonathan.
All right. That's a wrap for another bensettle.com podcast. We'll be back in your earbuds next time. Thank you for tuning in.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To get your hands on a free issue of Ben Settle's prestigious $97 per month email player's newsletter, simply go to www.bensettle.com.
This is the podcastfactory.com.